Today's video is brought to you by Raid. Raptors? Just kidding, this video isn't actually sponsored, although that was admittedly a bit of a missed opportunity on my part. Anyway, today's video is obviously about the brand new character SHAY Obsidian, and let's not beat around the bush here, you guys are only here for one reason. You want to know, is this character worth playing? Well, how about I show you? So here's today's deck list. Now just a reminder before we get into the deck list, if you're enjoying today's video and want to see more content just like this in the future, especially some more new box content, as I still have Crusadia, Mechlord, Duel Avatar, and plenty of other decks planned out, so if you're interested in seeing any of that content, remember to leave a like on this video and consider subscribing down below. Alright, let's get into the deck list. So today's list consists of 5 main deck monsters, the first one being your Mimicry. This card, like most of the main deck monsters in here, has a very simple effect. When it's in the graveyard, you can just banish it to search for one of your other Raidraptor monsters. It does have another effect where it can change the level of its stuff to do other stuff, but we're not going to be using that, so just ignore it. Alright, then we have your Tribute. This card is essentially a combo for this card, as it just sends one of your Raidraptors to the graveyard. So use this, send this to the graveyard, and then just search for a card. Then we have your Vanishing, which just special summons out one of your Raidraptors from hand. Fairly simple. Then we have your Singing. This card, if you have an Xyz monster on the field, can special summon itself to the field. And finally, we have your Pain, which just targets one of your Raidraptor monsters, copies its level, and special summons itself to the field. So very, very simple effects from the main deck monsters. Then we have the 2 rank up magic spells, which despite the amount of card text they have, are also relatively simple. This one basically just allows you to target one of your Raidraptor Xyz monsters in the graveyard, bring it back to the field, then rank up 2 ranks higher. So you can just turn this card into an Evolzar Solda, or turn it into a copy of your Revolution Falcon. And your other one basically just targets an Xyz monster on the field and ranks it up 1 rank, but it's not generic, so this one can only turn it into other Raidraptors. So it can summon back or summon your 4 Strix, then you can turn it into a copy of your Stranger Falcon. But the advantage of this card is that it can actually bring back your copy of SHAY Force from the graveyard, allowing you to reuse it later on. So generally, you'll be searching for your SHAY Force with your skill, which we'll talk about in just a second. Use it, then on the following turn, if there is a following turn, you can then search for a copy of your Raid Force, use it to bring back this card, and get 2 rank ups in 1 turn. Speaking of the skill, we have Raptor's Rising, and this skill is fairly straightforward. Essentially, during this duel, you can only use Raidraptor monsters Xyz material, so you can't run anything else in the main deck except Raidraptor monsters. Then when you want to summon out a Raidraptor Rise Falcon, you can summon it using any Raidraptor Xyz monster except copies of itself, which we're actually only running 1 copy anyway, for a reason we'll talk about in just a second. In addition, the following effects can be used once per turn and twice per duel. Remove 1 Xyz material from a Raidraptor Rise Falcon you control, and set 1 rank up magic spell card to your field from your deck. So essentially just use one of your Falcons to then search for a rank up spell, which then you can use on that Falcon or use on a card you just attached from that Falcon. As you'll see during the gameplay, that's going to be your main combo. At the end of the turn you have used this skill, return all rank 4 Xyz monsters on the field and or graveyard to the extra deck, which might seem like a downside, which it can be sort of, as it does sort of stunt a lot of your combos, but in general it's actually just a massive upside, as it means your extra deck can be a lot more, which an extra deck that's normally pretty tight, it's just a lot more loose now, because all your Xyz monsters, they shuffle themselves back into the deck, so you can just reuse them on future turns. And considering most of your Xyz monsters are just being used as material anyway, they're just going to be going to the graveyard, so it's nice to be able to put them back in the deck, then reuse them on future turns, especially the Rise Falcon, since it's your main combo piece for using your skill. Now let's talk extra deck. So your main boss monster is going to be your Revolution Falcon. This card is really crazy. Essentially this card can just attach 1 material to then be able to attack every single special summon monster your opponent has. And not only that, but when it attacks one of your opponent's monsters, it can reduce its attack to 0. So it can swing into every single one of your opponent's special summon monsters, reduce all their attacks to 0, and just lethal your opponent very, very easily. Especially considering it has 2000 attack base, that means just to swing into 2 of your opponent's monsters, and your opponent is just dead. It also has another effect, where basically if it has a Raidraptor Xyz monster as material, you can once per turn target 1 monster your opponent controls and destroy it. If you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to quarter the attack that monster had on the field. So it's a target pop, as well as having a massive just OTK potential attached to it. Speaking of OTK potential, we have Rise Falcon, which is the card which can be used with your skill most often, so its actual effect doesn't get used that often, but it still does come up quite a bit. Alright, this card can attack all special summon monsters your opponent controls once each, similar to your Revolution. Once per turn, you can attach one material from this card, then target one face-up special summon monster your opponent controls. This card gains attack equal to that monster's current attack. So even with just this card, a lot of the time if your opponent fills up their field, you can steal one of your opponent's attack, then just swing into their entire field and just completely wipe them, and occasionally do some OTKing with just this card alone. Next up, we have your Solda, and this card's going to be your main turn 1 play. It's sort of the safer of the two. Your other one's going to be, of course, your Evilswarm Nightmare, which is a card I'm sure you guys have all seen before, but this one's obviously brand new, and this one is generally better because it's safer, because essentially this card cannot be destroyed by card effects while it has exceeds material. So it means when it's face up on the field, if your opponent has something like Dark Hole, which is a fairly popular spell card in the game, as you can see, it's nice to have a card that is just immune to Dark Hole, so you can actually use it to disrupt your opponent. Because when your opponent special summons a monster, you can attach an exceeds material from this card to destroy that monster. So this card is immune to Dark Hole, so it's why I prefer to sort of summon it on turn 1. But you still do have the option of your Nightmare, and this card, although its effect isn't technically once per turn, you'll only have one material on it, as you'll see during the gameplay. So if you summon out your Nightmare, you'll have 2 materials, so that's 2 face down switches you can do. It's sort of up to you, depending on what you see your opponent's playing. Maybe you see your opponent's playing a deck list, or you see your opponent's character and you work out the deck they're probably playing just special summons a billion times a turn, and this card just isn't going to be enough. Maybe summon out your Nightmare, but in general, this one's probably better. Next up, we have 4 Strix. This card gains 500 attack and defense for each winged beast monster you control. Once per turn, you can attach one exceeds material from this card to add one level 4 dark winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. And finally, we have your copy of Raidraptor Stranger Falcon, which is a card you need to run as you need to have a target for your rank up magic raid force. Alright, if this card is an exceeds material, it gains this effect. Once per turn, you can attach one material from this card, then target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it. If you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its original attack. So again, just another target destroy. Fairly similar to this card's effect, actually. Alright. If this card in your possession is destroyed by your opponent's card by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one Raidraptor Exceeds monster in your graveyard except Raidraptor Stranger Falcon and special summon it. If you do, attach this card to it as Exceeds material. So there's a nice little flood effect too for if it gets destroyed, but generally if you're summoning this card, you're probably in a good enough position where you're just going to win the game. Since you do want to use this generally as your second option, you want to start off with this one, and on the follow-up turn, you'll go into your second rank up magic spell card, and by that point, your opponent should be dead. As for the rest of the deck list, still just your typical stuff you've probably all seen before, so without further ado, let's get into some replays. Alright, so as per usual I have to say this every single time this happens, otherwise I get giga flamed in my comment section. If you're wondering why we're platinum for these replays, the season literally reset today, so don't be fooled by this platinum. It's basically all the people from Legend and King of Games all been stuffed into one, so that's why we're in platinum right now. The season just reset, so don't be fooled by that. Alright, so if you're wondering about win rates with this particular deck list, honestly, it was sort of a mixed bag. As you can see, I had a win streak here, a bit of a loss streak going on here, which in Legend, this would have actually just been a D rank. Then I also had a 5-game win streak down here, which is, 4 or 5. There was definitely another win after this, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not really sure how good this deck list actually is. I definitely climbed a few ranks with it, so it's definitely a good deck list, but is it considered like top tier worthy? I'm not too sure about that. I think this deck list, it kind of relies on your opponent to have sort of very, very little disruption, if any at all, simply because it just doesn't really play that well through it, which is a bit of a shame, but that's sort of how it works. Unless you sort of just draw into your Forbidden Lance or your Swallow's Nest, you just don't really dodge back row very easily. And to be fair, if your opponent knows what you're playing, they're just going to use their back row on your Exceeds monsters rather than using them on your normal monsters, so you're not able to dodge it with Swallow's Nest anyway, so this card's sort of a noob bait card. It's a card I think you definitely need to run, because if you're not running it, there just isn't really a whole lot of stuff this can do against back row, so let's just want to run some MSTs or something. It's also obviously a great way to get your main starting cards out, so alright, so let's talk more about the actual duel. So my opponent is obviously playing Goki, and this guy set up the full Goki board but didn't have any back row, thankfully. Because like I mentioned earlier, if they have back row and they have like multiple negates, your deck is going to struggle quite a bit. It also doesn't help that your turn 1 for this deck list is fairly weak as well, unless you open a Book of Moon or something to go with your one monster on the field. It's a fairly weak turn 1. But yeah, you'll see in the you'll see the combos in this replay anyway, so you see what I mean by this deck list has sort of like there's a high ceiling, which is like how powerful it can be, but it also, yeah, it's it's not exactly the hardest thing to sort of disrupt. Alright, so finally my opponent's sub is full board, and past the turn. So to summon my monster activates effect. Thankfully my opponent doesn't really know what I'm doing, so he uses this thing in response, targeting this monster, so I can just dodge it with Swallow's Nest. Alright. Summon my copy of Vanishing, and sending a copy of my dude to the graveyard. Alright, Vanishing special summons to the field, goes into a copy of my 4 Strix, searching for my Singing Lanius. Lanius then searches for a copy of my Pain Lanius. Now keep in mind, by the way, as this is also kind of important, generally with this card, when it's in the graveyard, you're going to want to be searching for your copy of your level 1 first, because your Xyz monster can't actually search for this card, where it can search for literally all the other Raidraptors. So if you want to grab these 2 cards in particular for another Xyz summon, make sure you're searching for this one first with your graveyard card, then this one can search for the other one. Alright. So special summon, copy its level, go into a Rise Falcon. Popping off this animation as well. I actually don't think I actually looked at this animation once while dueling. There it is, the interesting looking parrot thing. Alright. Summon a second 4 Strix, it's actually not a once per turn. Search for a Lanius to follow up on future turns. Get my SHAY Force. Bring this dude back, swap him over for a copy of Revolution Falcon. Swing in, reduce attack to 0, beat into it, and then beat into it again. Alright. So that's a fairly good example of if your opponent has a little bit of disruption, you're just going to completely arse blast them. That's just what this deck list does. It's sort of just like combos into oblivion if your opponent has very little disruption, but has a couple of weak points right at the start, where if your opponent just sort of hits you with them and you don't have the actual out to it, you're going to struggle. Alright, so this is an example of going first. Alright. So actually a pretty shit hand, but it's not too bad because this card is a 1-card combo into your Xyz monster. Because this card can send your mimicry to the graveyard to search for your Pain summon itself, change its level, make 4 Strix, search for follow-up on the future turn. Generally going to be your Vanishing, so if you draw a monster you can just special summon it. Go into my Rise Falcon. We saw this already. Swap it over, get your SHAY Force, and then you can upgrade this into a copy of... Oh, upgrade this one, sorry, into a copy of your Evilswarm Solda. And during the end phase it shuffles itself back into the extra deck, so it can be used again for other stuff. Don't summon back a monster, but I'm not going to let him synchro summon with that, just going to negate it. From here, yeah, he was very much dead. Summon 4 Strix, get a search. I'm surprised he stayed in here as long as he did. Freeing up some board space so I can use my rank up spells. Get my Raid Force. Raid Force, update this into a copy of my Stranger Falcon. And the opponent can seize if I can do anything else. Alright, next up we have James. Alright. So hopefully you guys have sort of gotten a picture of sort of how this deck list works now. You see him going first and going second. And you sort of see the flaws it kind of has. It only really has one negate in its sort of setup. And if your opponent has a Book of Moon, it's kind of like, eh. And it's not even like an actual negate, it's just a destroy on summon, so it's not even like an actual negate. So if your opponent has an on-summon effect, it's kind of like, yeah, it ain't good. Alright, I'm gonna Book of Moon this dude. Unfortunately, my opponent actually had Twin Cobra, so it's sort of a waste of a book. But it's fine, because I have a second one, so I can just book this anyway. That was a shit hand, by the way. We just opened no monsters. But we topped it to copy of my tribute anyway. Send the grave, get a search, grab my Pain. Special summon, make a rank 4. Alright, fast forward a little bit. Search for a copy of my Vanishing for follow-up. Raptors Rising. And of course, end in a copy of my Negate. Don't want to go for any big boss monsters right now. I'm going to make it so that I can actually hopefully survive a turn and have follow-up and sort of do some cool stuff on the next turn, as I definitely can't kill him this turn. So I'm just going to hope that my Solda is enough in combination with my Lance to target his card that he's going to target with his quick play spell. And there's the Dark Hole, by the way. Dark Hole and a card that's just immune to it. Alright. And a couple of searches off. Just holding on here. Basically, I'm waiting for his copy of Goki Rematch so I can get this thing's like full value out of it by popping 2 cards. I know he gets searches because it is Goki, but it's okay, because I know I've got my Forbidden Lance to stop his main spell from killing me, the finishing move. And if he doesn't kill me and I top deck literally any monster, I'm going to just absolutely go ham. It's just what we're banking on. Alright, still waiting for him to activate it. As soon as he activates it, train Forbidden Lance, and we're no longer dead. We gain some life points back, but that's just not going to be enough. So going to my first Xyz monster, searching for my Lanius. Raptors Rising, searching for my Raid Force. Raid Force, upgrade this one to a copy of my Stranger Falcon. Then with this engraved, we can use this effect to search for my SHAY Force. Bring him back, see summon out Revolution Falcon. Pop his card in the field, do damage to him, and yeah, there's at least one field. Alright. Yeah, the comboing for this deck is quite fun, so if you do enjoy sort of the spam out a billion Xyz monsters in a turn, this could be a deck for you. Especially considering there's not really that many decks in Duel Links that do this kind of thing. It's sort of similar to how Onomat used to OTK. Right, and here's one of the rank ups. Oh, this is a pretty decent replay too. This is against Salamangre, and this guy got a pretty decent setup. Generated a lot of value. And his turn went for 40 decades because of it. Get a Foxy, summon the blah 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 blah. Gazelles, and you copy to the graveyard. He eventually does, yes, I mean the Jaguar. Go into his dude, activate field spell, swap it over, add back the spell he used for searching earlier, bring back the Jaguar, add back a monster, and his hand is literally bigger than when it started. And then he sets 2 cards and passes. So we know one of these cards is basically a bait, because it's just going to be the card he added back to hand, the circle. So we only have to worry about 1 back row, and thankfully we have Lance, so I'm not scared about anything I'm doing here. I'm just playing as if nothing exists. Alright, swap it over, got a copy of my Lanius. There's the bottomless, negate that. Alright, send my dude, get a search. Right. This card, by the way, is actually not a once per turn, so if you summon multiple of them, you can actually use multiple of them. I don't think I did that here, but I actually don't think I did that here, but that's something, you'll see that in future replays. I don't know why I wanted to bring that up just then, but keep that in mind, this card isn't actually a once per turn. I think then the next replay, the replay after. Yeah, I saw my 4 Strix. Search for a copy of my Singing. 2 Seals in the field, so we summon out a copy of Rise Falcon, circle. Nice, see summon into another one. SHAY Force, bring back, Xyz summon up into Revolution Falcon. And then rank up once again. Bring out a Stranger Falcon. Yeah, he is so dead. Protects himself with the Bailings, and he's unaffected by monster effects, so I couldn't reduce, but it doesn't matter because I have enough stuff on the field anyway. Alright, next up. I actually recorded quite a few replays today. Alright. I think this was the guy that I thought was playing Pendulum, because I just saw the character, didn't pay attention to his field at all. Turns out he definitely wasn't playing Pendulum. And this was an example of a replay where I probably should have just opened a copy of my my Evilswarm Nightmare if I knew what he was playing, because I don't think the negate I summoned would have been that effective if he had a better hand or played a bit better. So we're going to summon out a copy of our Evilswarm. And face shuffle it all back and set my cards. Yeah, so if he was playing Phantom Knight, and there was a point where I popped his monster where if he just had a copy of this dude in the graveyard, he could have summoned another dude from hand if he had one. So I'm hoping, I assume he just didn't, but yeah. So try to summon this, I'm going to take Book of Moon on it, he's been Lancers. That's fine because we have a negate, so we can't do any Exceed summoning anyway. Once he Exceeds someone, we're in a very big spot of bother, so we're just going to make sure to stop that happening as best we can. And thankfully, my opponent didn't have much else to do, so I think he just sort of passed. Alright. Vanishing, summon out my Tribute. Tribute send, get a search. Summon it out. Search for a copy of my Singing. And there's another rank 4 if I want one. Although I did mess up here, because I'm pretty sure I didn't actually have... Yeah, I didn't have a rank 4 left. Or I didn't have a copy of my my bird left. So a bit rough, because I'm pretty sure it just meant that my field was kind of clogged. But thankfully I had Swallow's Nest, so I could just sort of summon an 1800 attack lethal anyway. Yeah, and this is lethal on field, even through the trap card we saw him search for. Spin Lance, block it so we can't defend it, swing it in. Swing it again. He's forced to summon this thing now, and then we finish him with Tribute. Right, on to the final gameplay. Alright. Forgot what this guy was playing, actually. Oh yeah, it's the guy that had Sewer Volley, but wasn't able to use it. Alright. I'm not sure about the quality of this this opponent's deck list, but it was doing something. Alright. Revealing his Sewer Poly. Getting a hold of Malicious Bane, which is like, I don't think I've even seen someone summon against me in game yet. And this skill has been out for decades now. It's been a while since I've seen this. If I've ever seen it. Sums out Malicious Bane. I actually forgot this card was even obtainable in this game via a skill. Alright, Lanius, send this dude. Turns out his back row was all just baiting stuff, and we know one of them's Super Poly and he has a card, he doesn't even have a card in hand to use for it, so I'm not worried. And I have Book of Moon anyway, so. So just Book of Moon this thing, which is currently immune to destruction and immune from battle. Probably just reduce this thing's attack to 0 and beat and throw it anyway, with a copy of my Exceeds monster, but yeah. We still, I think, removed it. Alright, detach, searching for Shave. Upgrade him up. Make a Revolution Falcon. 4 Strix, once again, upgrade up. I'm pretty sure this card didn't get counted as special summon, so I couldn't use my Rise Falcon on it. So I Book of Moon this thing, I should have used Rise Falcon on it first, because this thing I couldn't target for some reason. Maybe it's something to do with something else in here, I don't really know. Either way, I couldn't use my thing on this dude, so a bit awkward. But it's still fine, we have Stranger Falcon, so I think we still had lethal anyway. Raid Force, adding back my Shade Force for later on. Pop his card, 1500 damage. Pop his card, 650, and only one monster needed. Alright guys, that's all for today's replays. Hope you guys enjoyed them. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob? Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis. Oh.